Hey everybody, small note here. The video file was corrupted, but fortunately I recorded it through Zoom as well, so the video quality isn't great, but the audio is just fine. I really hope you enjoy this. There's some great stuff here. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for another video. I'm super excited today to have Mr. Roto Grip himself, Chris Schlemer, RotoSchlem, the man. What's up, man?
Nothing, brother. What's going on? Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and coming to you. As you can see, I've got the conference room wall behind me. So this was always the quietest, and we've kind of dubbed this our little video room or video station, as we've been surviving these last 5 6 months, trying to figure out the new way to communicate, to the bowling world.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks pretty good and sounds pretty good too. So that's notice you got that all buttoned down here and dressed up nice. You said Fridays you kind of dress down, but you got to. It's assuming I get this up today. It's Rubicon release day. It's September 4th, and got the new one coming out. So doing a bunch of stuff today.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing this morning was getting, all the social media covers updated and stuff. The available now. I know a lot of people have been excited about this ball.
Yeah.
They were, the distributors could start shipping them on Monday, and I know there was a lot of pre-orders and a lot of pro shops across the country that do the pre-order and then drill them and then have them ready for people to pick up today. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of weird how our industry works, I guess, as far as announcing balls and then releasing balls and all that stuff. And, the fact that, yeah, we told everybody about the Rubicon, seems, like I said, seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
But that's just how the business works. We're, here at Storm, we've got too big of a monster machine to, I guess we've talked about, like, oh, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could do stuff like Apple does, like kind of tease some stuff and then all of a sudden, boom, just drop it.
Yeah.
The problem is we've got all these different international customers and all this other stuff that has to happen well in advance. And, we do the best we can with, getting stuff out there. But anyway, to the general public and the masses there, the Rubicon is available today. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that there's a bunch of different things. I worked in a pro shop for a while. I'm sure that distributors have to figure out how many they're going to order, and then pro shops get pre-orders out there, and they're kind of testing the waters, seeing what kind of interest they have. And yeah, I'm sure that there's a bunch of intermoving parts that the general public just doesn't quite realize. So
yeah, and I got to be honest with you, dude. It's one of those things that it's changed considerably, given this, like I said, the current pandemic, the current world we're living in.
oh yeah.
Because the way things were, I guess, before March, it was, we would have to we would put out a program, or whenever we develop bowling balls, usually our partners in Asia, distributors in Korea, Japan, and sometimes Europe, when it comes to international balls, but they're like the domestic stuff. We've got to get their orders and stuff in advance because one of the things that's a big battle in our industry is side importation, coming from our country into theirs. So they always want to focus and have their hands in it. And so they get it. Actually, they usually get it, in a window before we announce it and release it here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But then you throw in the COVID thing. So we already had that in the system. But, before, distributors would be like, oh, yeah, oh, hey, they look at it and go, oh, well, this ball, we've had success with this in the past. We see this, and so all the distributors are just like, oh yeah, here's my number. And
Yeah.
like this in the case of a Rubicon, and the fact that it's a mild asymmetric going in HB3, based on what it was before, distributors some guys would have been hesitant, some guys would order a ton more.
Yeah.
But again, living in the world we're living in, and some of the distributors are still only operating at 50%. A lot of them don't even have a full workforce. We still have a lot of states that are still closed. So we've had to adjust our targets, and seeing how distributors order. Those numbers are minuscule compared to what they used to be when we were all free range chickens living in America, and now we're seemingly caged animals. And in some, like I said, some places they've been locked in California. We got pro shops and bowlers there. They're like, hey, we've been locked up since March, and now we're into September, and there's still no sign of, they're saying it could be anywhere from a week or two to a couple months to maybe 2021.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy in that regard. But anyway, those numbers are all considerably smaller. So the process is we're all kind of learning this new process because we don't know. Again, we don't know the mass. I mean, we are now. I will tell you, we are seeing an impact as bowling centers open, and people are excited to get back to bowling. In some spots, with the COVID stuff and wearing a mask, depending on where you are, what state, and in some cases, what county. Some people are like, oh, we got to wear the mask when we get in the bowling center, get to our get to our lanes, get to our pair in our little area. We don't have to wear it then. Some people, you got to have it on, the whole time. And within that, we've heard anything from pro shops and bowling centers saying, the league base is down maybe 20%. Some places they didn't lose anybody, and some places are down as much. There's been a couple reports now that they're down 60% of their league bowlers. So, but at least we're seeing a flow. We're starting to see some traffic. Again, will it get back to what it once was? At this point, Tom, I don't think anybody can predict the future. I mean, we're all kind of sitting back, kind of waiting to see how, where things progress. There was a major announcement here in Utah last night that actually was breaking news kind of on all our news platforms because Utah kind of leads the way as far as medical, medical health and different things as far as development of stuff. Utah created a few different tests that have been used now through this pandemic. But now here locally, they're reporting Utah will be one of the first, if not the first, states to have a vaccine or some sort of medication to control this this virus. Mm-hmm. And they're saying it could be as soon as 2.5 months from now. So that was just kind of breaking news out of nowhere last night. Like nobody, we've all been hearing, oh, there's working on vaccines and this and that. Well, all of a sudden I was watching some different channels and it was like breaking news. I'm like, now what's going on? It's like we've had some bad news and they go, Utah will be one of the first to report a vaccine. I'm like, wait, what? That's totally new and different. Okay. So we'll see how that plays out. But, it's the world we live in. Welcome to 2020.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't even really predict next week, let alone. And this is a question I was going to get to in a minute, but I'll go ahead and hop to it since we're talking about it. But with something like the Rubicon, that I imagine the wheels have been turning since they announced the weight hold ban and different. The big thing is the core with this one, and having something that's been in production as long as I imagine this has been in production, and then all of a sudden you have stuff like this, and so the wheels start turning on. The new ET core and then the Rondure core and whatever else. And then this hits. And then I imagine you had some delays or thought, okay, well, this is slated for earlier this year. And well, all of a sudden we got to push it back. And then you got other stuff that's behind that you got to push back and readjust. So how long have you been working on this kind of concept or this ball in particular?
As always, I give props to my man, Hank Boomershine, because Hank, I like to refer to Hank as the mad scientist. He's one of the smartest brains. He's one of the smartest individuals I know personally.
Yeah.
And, when the USBC came up with hey, we're taking away weight holes, that was one of his first things of, okay, so we're going to have to start building dynamics that can create motion because as we know, and sometimes we actually lose sight of it, I think, because when you look at sometimes it's too easy for us to get caught up, and we're all guilty of it. We get caught up in the ability and the levels of the average bowler. Because when it comes to consumers and the league bowlers around the globe, just in the USBC, just we use the United States as our kind of benchmark, as our target, and we're not even including, Canada, Mexico, Japan, Korea. Europe, other big markets for bowling. But here in America, you've got to look at the USBC as the governing body, and on average, they're reporting, obviously with COVID, their numbers are going to be down, but they've roughly been at close to that million, just over 1 million sanctioned bowlers.
Yeah.
And that's what it's been. But now you're also been in that same breath is the non-sanctioned league bowler, which that became a thing here within the last couple of years. The BPAA reports that, the last couple of years, that's a growing market. And that's in upwards of close to 900,000.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
we're, those last couple of years, we've kind of been close to 2 million. Obviously, that number is going to decrease a little bit. I think the last, listen to Dave Sims and, him and Bill Chrisman, the owner of Storm, they've been in communication with Frank DeSocia, the BPAA. We're going to see some adjusted numbers. And again, we don't know how long this pandemic thing is going to affect and change things, but you're still looking at, example, say it's a rough number of 1.7 million people that are organized bowlers in America.
Yeah.
The average, the overall consensus average for those, and we got numbers from USBC, and obviously we figure it mirrors and it may even pull it lower, but the bulk, over 70% of that membership averages less than 170.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that most people think, oh, you bowl league, oh, you must be really good. Well, you think about it, there's a lot of people, and now looking back, I've been in the industry now for 27 plus years, and man, I look at all the people that I've known that the boys bowl, my parents and stuff like that. I mean, some people that, man, if they shot 1,600 a year, like it was amazing.
Oh yeah,
Granted, we're talking a different era, but even now, like if I go hang out at the bowling center, because I don't bowl league much. Actually, I haven't bowled in a couple of years just because of with travel schedule, and then balance some health stuff and whatever else. But it's like you go watch people, and it's like, oh, so and so's been bowling this league for 25 years, and you watch them bowl, and their average is like 149. I'm like,
yeah,
they've averaged that for 25 years, and they're totally cool with it. Like that's their thing, and whatever. So it gets into, as far as technology and developing stuff. Like I said, advancements in creating ball motion. We're still kind of catering to a unique window, if you will. As we see the better players, people who strive to get better, the people that go in the pro shop and go, oh, hey, I want this ball. And, I was watching this thing and I was thinking maybe this layout and put a balance hole, or as we like to call, not necessarily, for those of us who've been around a long time, it wasn't ever really, back in the early days, it was more considered a balance hole because there was no core technology. And it was, what's funny is actually, if you go back to the first, I guess, dynamics or the evolution of bowling balls actually came from rotor grip. Vinny Atito, the founder of rotor grip, dating back to the 1950s. If you remember some of those, there was the different RCs and different stuff like that, but there was a left-handed and a right-handed version. And those happened by accident. Coming from the Columbia plant back in the day, because rotor grip never made their own balls. They were always contracted out. All the different manufacturers over the years made balls for rotor grip before Bill and Barb bought it in '97. But so rotor grip was actually the leading, you'll see it coming forward, but rotor grip was actually the leading high performance ball specialist, I guess, if you will, is what they were called. Because when he got a batch of balls from Columbia that all of a sudden he had one that kind of hooked a little bit more than the other ones. And we're talking like just past the rubber into urethane and into, different variations of polyester and some stuff. And he had no idea why. And come to find out they had mismarked CGs. And so then he started making them on purpose. So the left hand and the right hand were built. They actually had added side weight and added finger weight to make them hook. Nobody else on the market had that. So he requested it, and he said, oh, this is what I want. And so they built it for him. They thought he was crazy. But, so anyway, getting into the technology. So as far as designing these cores without weight holes, because like I said, Hank knew this was coming, and he even threw out the idea, he goes, man, we got to come up with some stuff. And, you start building ball motion. Anyway, what I was going to get to was not so much the balance hole thing, but the manipulation hole is what we refer to it as. Because where you place that hole, inside your VAL, past it, down, up, you can change the flare planes and different stuff like that. And then obviously the size and, you're penetrating different parts of the core. Yeah. It was really used to dial in ball reaction and make a ball do what you wanted it to do. Now you don't have that luxury. Yeah. And so you have to kind of build. I mean, we were already advanced in technology as far as building some of the hook. Everybody's like, oh man, you build a hook in a box. Well, a lot of it was cover heavy for a number of years. And now it gets into when Hank started going on this line, and the first one was the UFO part, the ET core, like you had mentioned, was having those cavities. And with a big round cavity there towards the top, you're not going to the fingers are usually going to go into the top spot. The thumb's going to clip the bottom of that hole. So really all you're going to do is elongate that kind of oval with the fingers and thumb. You're actually going to push it this way, which makes that void bigger. But then you've got those two other small voids, you know, where you place those, you can actually create that kind of emulate whatever. But then it got into, you know, as far as technology, and Hank brought this up. You know, again, this Ron Core, as I mentioned in I've been on some other shows and done some other announcement stuff. That ball's big. I mean, it's a year and a half in the process.
Yeah.
It's not just something that, and again, I think that's sometimes what people lose sight of. And we cross ourselves up when we're trying to, oh yeah, we're working on this, we're working on that. We're so far ahead of some stuff in testing because we have to put our, you know, we got to make sure we got our ducks in a row before we bring something to market. But, you know, when you get into something like that of, you know, now you're creating that. But anyway, we get into the mild asymmetry. It comes to the line of, like you had mentioned about balance holes. For those folks with the majority of the masses that love those lower RG symmetrical cores, figure you take like an idle pearl, you got the IQ series, even the Axiom and stuff like that. You take those, say you drill and pin down, you pop an extra hole in it. You actually, those would no longer be or no longer symmetrical balls. You actually make them slightly asymmetric. And so and you don't do it a ton again when we're depending on where you put that hole, how you manipulated things, but you could increase that. Basically, you would create an added intermediate split, you know, a differential like a PSA diff. That would, in some cases with those, you could make it, you know, 0.003 to, and Hank and I talked about it, you know, and granted, we didn't do a lot of tedious search. We just knew that number was there. But you take some of those low RG symmetrics, pop a hole in it, you could even get them to like 0.008, 0.009. But now you take that away and you don't have the balance hole thing. So now still based on where you position those symmetrical cores, because you I guess now with like switch grips and ITs and the big interchangeable thumbs, you can move mass a little bit, but it's closer to, you know, it's like 0.001 to like 0.004.
Okay.
Well, then you go to the other end of our spectrum. All of our ASIMs are basically our big ASIMs. They all start at 0.015 on that PSA split. So when you drill it, those bump a little bit more. So the grand scheme of things, if you take a symmetrical ball and drill it, you may get it to 0.002, or you're going to have it like 0.017. Well, there's a pretty big gap in there because you can add those low RG symmetricals with a hole. And so that's where Hank's like, he goes, I'm going to target like 10. And, you know, as soon as, you know, I think the first rendition of this core, and obviously there had to be quite a few modifications, but, you know, the first test runs of this core, you know, it's coming out today, September the 4th, 2020. The first tests of this core were actually like December of 2019. And when we saw the motion, we're like, oh, hey, yeah, we could still use weight holes at the time, but we're like, well, hey, that's different. And, you know, it was an instant. And then we had to get into some deals of, you know, as you see, there's the cuts, and then there's the couple shave kind of flat spots on the front and back. Again, these were all just modifications over time to get the numbers dialed in exactly where we want them. But again, now that you've got a 0.010, or, you know, in case of the 15s, it's 0.011. You know, and it may bump a point or two. So now it kind of fills that big gap that was in there between our strong ASIMs and our strong, you know, low RG symmetricals. So that's really, I know that was a long-winded, random conversation that zigged and zagged, but came back to it. But yeah, so that's ultimately how we got to where we are with that. And I can and will tell you that, of course, Storm is working on their versions of that as well. Because we see now that the balance hole thing is come and gone, we see there's still a pretty big window in there for us to build some stuff to fit that need and fill those gaps. I mean, so.
Yeah, and this is kind of the stuff that people ask about, or that's interested in, or they're interested in because they see the marketing stuff and they see the buzzwords and this and that, but when they want to know more about this kind of stuff and about the kind of the behind the scenes stuff that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, and that goes into something else I want to talk about the different cover types, like I had somebody ask me, okay, so we've got the UFO and we've got the Rubicon, and the number, obviously the UFO is stronger, but what's the real difference? What's the difference between micro tracks and E-tracks? And I imagine once you get this core set, then you pour a bunch of different test balls and you try it with this cover and that cover, and so maybe go into a little bit of the core types. You got micro tracks on stuff like the formulas. Got different versions for different years that you kind of update, but you got micro tracks on stuff like the UFO and the Idol. Then you've got short tracks, which is the first time you've used that one on the Wild Streak, and then you have E-tracks that you've used quite a bit so far, and that's one of my favorites. I really love micro tracks too, but I like all of them.
Right.
You got stuff like that on the Nuke, and then the Idol Pearl. He had it on the Idol Pro, and then VTC on kind of the HP1 and HP2 stuff. So when you're building something like this, you get the core and you test it with. So how do you end up with E-tracks on the Rubicon?
So when it gets to stuff like this, and I'm glad you brought that up because it is something that I know the masses have questions when it gets into the different materials and formulations. And really, like I said, Hank and Alex Alex actually, Alex has come a long way. He's now oversees R&D. Hank's actually oversees R&D, but Alex is now the lead guy in R&D.
Yeah.
And he's now developing cores as well. His latest baby is the Parallax. So that's an Alex concept that he came up with and developed and worked through and, created from step one. And so now we've got two guys that are creating some pretty awesome things.
Yeah.
When they come up with they just kind of come up with the concepts and ideas and, we're kind of hitting a variety of numbers. And then when we kind of look at our big board, especially now, again, with the way things are changing with, now here in Utah, because we've closed a facility in Texas. So we now have a third brand in the mix. We've got Storm, we've got RotoGrip, and now we add Global into it. When we're looking at these core designs, there's kind of is like I said, one of those things that RotoGrip's been known as a technical kind of, and if you go all the way back to some of the early stuff that Hank did because Hank was the guy in charge of RotoGrip for a long time before he became the guy in charge of sales. Okay. And so you get in as he started getting into the cores and some of that stuff, most commonly one of the most famous RotoGrip balls of all time is the Cell. And there's kind of different cuts and different looks and kind of different feels and ball motion wise with these shapes, even though numbers a lot of times, and I think that's where people get confused sometimes because the numbers may come out the same based on mass and volume and densities. But the core shapes can be manipulated to create totally different reactions, even though the numbers are the same. And there's been so many times I've had to explain that. I tour rep for a long time. I had, 11, 12 years out there tour repping and still to this day help the guys and girls on our staff and sometimes go out and help tour rep. Because sometimes the pro bowlers get caught in that as well. They're like, well, this is a high RG or this is a low RG and it's supposed to do this, this, and this, but it doesn't do that. And I go, well, you're also dealing with a core mass that, one might be this big and the next one might be this big, but they got the same exact numbers. And then they go, oh, okay. So there's a little bit more in depth to that. But anyway, getting into how we design the cores, it's kind of one of those things when we look at the shapes, there actually is a point in time where we all, as we have weekly R&D meetings and some other meetings, but an R&D is when we look at these cores and weight blocks and we go, yeah, that kind of looks like a RotoGrip part, or that kind of looks like a Storm part. Now we got the global thing. So now we can go, well, if it doesn't fit here, maybe it goes there, so we're kind of piece and parting. And then from there, once it's established that, oh, hey, like say this Ron-Dur part, once we establish that this is a upcoming RotoGrip part,
okay,
then I take it and figure out, okay, well, here's what I got in the product line currently. What am I missing? Because I look at it when I took over RotoGrip in 2012, that was the first thing that I set and established because when I toured it for all those years and, I talked to Hank, even though I talked to Hank about it, and RotoGrip was never, we always kind of, it was one of those things that it was just kind of there and we made balls and we just, it kind of was just, it was just kind of there. Because the crazy part, when Wes Malott was player of the year in 2009, when I was still tour repping, my man threw a cell pearl almost every week.
Yeah.
But the tough part is, like, in that stretch of time, the guys at the time, nobody could throw both brands.
Uh-huh.
The guys could only stick to their brand. And I would call the office all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, so the Storm guys are doing great because they've got a whole plethora of bowling balls.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
said, I got less than these other guys. And I'm like, they legit got like 3 balls to bowl on tour. And I'm like, man, it's like taking a slingshot and some pellets to a machine gun fight. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not fair at all. And so that was one of the first things that that always stuck in the back of my mind. And then when they put me in charge of RotoGrip in 2012 and said, hey, we're gonna, if we kind of eased me into it, but then they kind of opened up the reins a little bit and kind of let me. I said, well, here's what I see, and they go, okay, if that's what you think and that's what we want to do, go for it. My thing was always building a product line. I said, if we're going to have a brand exist by itself, I said, I need options top to bottom and I need them side to side.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, once I focus on RotoGrip as the top to bottom, side to side, then I got to see how it plugs into the Storm side and not overlap. Because at the end of the day, Big Brother, Storm is Storm, and I'm the guy on RotoGrip Island, and as I like to refer to the mothership,
Yeah.
RotoGrip's not gonna derail them. I'm gonna keep chasing them the best I can with brand, and we've got some awesome stuff, and we've come a long way in a few years. Sales wise, we're now although there for a while we were battling for the number 2 slot behind Storm, because before it was like Storm. And then it was like all the way down here is like second place. It was like Hammer. And then way below that was RotoGrip, and then all the other brands. Yeah. Well, then Brunswick and Ebonite kind of popped in there for a while. Then all of a sudden, finally started getting RotoGrip. And then it became a battle. And not that we closed that gap, but we did bring it a little bit closer. And then it was just a head-to-head battle based on what ball launch came out. RotoGrip and Hammer's overall sales in the industry. But again, we're light years behind Storm. And so, developing these options – just looking at, hey, what's going to be a good fit? Well, for us, when Hank and I talked about it, and I said, man, the smile asymmetric makes sense. And he goes, and you know what I'm thinking? He goes, you're probably going to think I'm nuts, but I'm like, well, dude, you're one of the smartest guys I know. But yeah, you might be nuts. Okay.
We'll see. Yeah.
When he goes, I think this needs to be HB3. I think we need to sell at a price point, like we did the Cell. And I'm like, okay,
yeah,
cool. I like it. Because we've got competition in that same spot, and we all know because, obviously all the manufacturers talk, so we know that here before too long, all the other brands are going to be doing the same kind of thing because the balance holes went away. So when we came up with like, okay, HB3, well, then I look at it and go, okay, well, to get kind of now to your question, the Idol, just like HB3, we got the Idol with micro tracks. Yeah. We've got the Wild Streak with Sure Tracks, and now I put an E-Track Solid on this Rubicon. And the reason being is those 3 materials are 3 completely different formulas. Micro Tracks is actually a particle added material. So that's the nanoparticles. In comparison, we've used different particles over the course of time. If you go way back in the day, if you remember back when there was like ceramic and glass and all the other stuff that was used. And even in the early days of Storm, we used rubber and some other stuff. Now we use nanoparticles. And so that's where Microtracks fits in. We take our different formulas of our A and Bs, and then we mix in that nanoparticle, and that's where we get that mega traction and that really, kind of spongy and heavy oil stuff. How Sure Tracks came about is, honestly, it was one of those things that when the Wild Streak was, again, that's a weight block ball that, again, not something we'd had in a long time. Wanted something different. And then I took it one step further. I wanted something different, but I'm like, well, hell, I might as well wrap it with something totally different. And that chemistry is actually down the lines of, you've probably heard of the Phase 2. It's along that same type of formula. So that is, again, a formulated base material, but that now actually has a chemical additive to it. Okay. So it's different than the particle stuff, and it's different than what E-Trax is. So you take a material, so, Microtracks, we've got particle enhanced, Sure Tracks, we've got chemically enhanced, and then you take E-Trax, which is just our purest form of reactive, no additives, no nothing. And like you said, I know you mentioned that was one of your faves. That material, you think where we last used it on, you're right, on the Idol Pro. But again, that finish was something different with that sheen. Again, that ball kind of just got lost in a shuffle. That's why it's no longer with us. The idle pearl are still selling good, but the solid version of the E-Trax is straight sanded. Like the IQ Tour, kind of just that steady base reactive. And that's why I told Hank, I said, coming out and then looking at what we saw, what we got on the Storm side, we still have the IQ Tour, but then the other solid ball you got in Masterline is Axiom, and that's a big cover. That's a enhanced cover as well. So I'm like, man, there's definitely a gap and there's a window. It's going to fill my need, and it's also going to help mesh into the Storm side. So that's how I got to E-Trax on that ball. And then like you mentioned, getting down to VTC, versatile traction control. Again, that's just our base reactive. It's more durable. It's easy ply. It's kind of it's a step down. It's not as super responsive as say like it's not as aggressive as E-Trax. The formula is adjusted down a little bit.
Okay.
But that's what makes it a good fit for that HP2 price point, which again kind of goes alongside the Hotline, and then we've got Hustles in at HP1, which are a step above. And in essence, more often than not, the Hustles even fit above Hotline balls. How it kind of fits because Storm's got a few more lines. So you've got Tropicals, then you go Hotline, and then you zigzag over. You come over to HP1. Then we go to the Thunder. Then we go. Or actually HP2, then we go to Thunder. We've got a little bottom line is a little jumbled, but then it zigzags back and forth, towards the top. But formulations that it gets into, like I said, what enhancements we put into the cover, and then as far as changing the ratios in those formulas, again, each one's kind of different. There is testing, and there's other stuff that happens over the course of time, like you mentioned. As far as each year, everybody's like, well, each year you got this, you got that. And I'm like, well, it's one of those things that, Storm has so many different cover stocks, and Rotogrip is one of those things. And I said, they're minor adjustments. And again, that's chemistry stuff that comes from our chemist, our material vendor, because they say, oh, by the way, we adjusted it or we tweaked this, whether it's based solely on materials available at the time, or something they found in their research that, we're always striving to make high-performing, durable material that just lasts and as far as longevity and all these different components. And those guys are constantly tinkering as well. So that's how we kind of get to that stuff. And we've kind of reached a new spot. And so I will let you know that coming forward, I'll just go out and say it. I won't be actually coming up with the yearly type thing because we've kind of reached a spot in the chemistry where we're kind of there. But I will tell you that now they found a whole nother kind of fork in the road. And now we're going to start seeing more and more different options per se. Not so much that, we've got solid pearl and hybrid in, E-Trax and solid pearl hybrid in SureTrax. What I'm saying is, there'll be more of those. They'll just be different name materials because the chemistry guys they go, oh, hey, what do you think of this? And again, our R&D team, Alex, I got to give props to Alex and, all the folks we got around here that throw bowling balls because there's every week in R&D meeting, we've got, hey, we did 10 more tests and we tested this material into this ratio and da-da-da.
Yeah.
It's like some of them you're sitting there looking, we got Specto and we're sitting here looking at the big screen in the conference room and it's like the lines overlap. And then all of a sudden you got one that's like an arrow different. Like, whoa, hey, what's that? Like, oh, that's material. There was this material added with this other one, which they didn't think was going to work, but it was at this ratio, but they think they can adjust it to this. And we're like, okay, so then they go down that route. And, then the next thing you know, it's like 2 months later and we finally get to a spot where it's kind of close. And I guess it's like anything else. There's always evolution because then the chemists are like, we got something. Oh man, this is really good. All of a sudden they go, hey, we got something you guys want to try. Like we've been working hard on this one for like 2 to 4 months. Alex has been done all these tests and all of a sudden they go, well, if you like this one, try this. And all of a sudden that one's better than the one that they've been formulating, like building up to. And we're like, why do you guys keep doing this to us? So, it's kind of it turns into a chase of sorts, and like I said, our guys do a great job keeping up with that. But like I said, we'll be looking moving forward. We've got some exciting stuff on the horizon. We'll see some other just new materials. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game. So, we got Hank and Alex doing cores, and we got chemistry happening and cover stocks, and it's only 2020. I mean,
Yeah.
Who knows what next year brings?
Yeah, and you got all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah.
But that might segue into another thing, and this might be a little bit vague, and I don't know how specific you can get with this, but sometimes you just have that like lightning in a bottle type stuff where you take, okay, well, this is a cool core and this is a cool cover and think this should work, and then all of a sudden it's even so much better than you thought it was going to be. But what is kind of a two-part question? So what's something that you kind of looked at on paper that you thought, oh, this is going to be pretty good, and then it just sucked? And then on the other side of that, what's something that you maybe it's like, well, I don't know if this will work out, but we'll try it, and then you got surprised? Like I said, that's kind of a vague question, but
and I guess that is a very vague question, because
or maybe how often does that happen? I guess.
Every once in a while, there's some core, and again, I guess there's different. Your question is tough because I guess there's different levels or different elements that cause things to go the way they go.
Uh-huh.
Again, when it comes to sales, I mean, it's one of those things that there's times where storm balls just overshadow everything else in the industry. And sometimes balls just get lost just because something else is hot. And it's purely, that's the only reason. But then there's other times where there balls that should be amazing, that consumers then are the deciding factor because they don't like the name or they don't like the color.
Okay, or maybe that's the wrinkle that we can chase, is stuff that you thought was maybe going to be more successful than it ended up being, or stuff that you were like, okay, well, I think it's going to be good, but
and I will give you one of the ones that still to this day still bothers me. And the crazy thing is most people already forgot about it, but so over the course of time, obviously, like I said, Hank's developed a lot of different cores and stuff, and the nucleus core had gone away for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And so, when we reached a point back in, it was probably back towards when I started the RotoGrip thing, 2012, 2013, probably 2012, 2013, I said, we hadn't used the cell part, the nucleus part in a while. And I said, man, I think I can use that part. I said, I'm pretty sure I could bring that ball back to life. And he's like, oh man, we did, we had cell pearl, and we did a bunch of in Asia. He's like, I don't know, man. And I'm like, no, because we had new materials, and that's what right at the beginning of microtracks. We just gotten into the path of the nanoparticle stuff.
Okay.
And that's where the hypercell came from.
Yeah.
And that was a great selling ball.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh my gosh, this ball hooks so much. It's so great. And And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, and Hank's like, dude, he goes, I didn't think you were going to pull that off, but man, the colors were good. The ball hooked. Like it was good.
Yeah.
So where people forget the next one, I spaced them out because at that time we were doing ball launches every 6 months. That was another thing I did when I took over RotoGrip, was to get RotoGrip established, because it kind of had a lost identity. It didn't exist consistently for a while, and because it kind of it was part of Storm, but we kind of there was nobody in charge of it, and that's why they put me in charge of it, because again, it was kind of just stagnant off in the corner
there. Yeah.
So my first thing going back for my old school pro shop days was to release balls every 6 months. So I had schedules. You had to be a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1. So we were going to launch 4 balls, but it was going to be every 6 months. So pro shops knew it was coming, distributors knew it was coming, and that's what kind of helped get RotoGrip kind of back on track and back on the map. And then it reached a point where distributors and pro shops are like, "Hey, we need you to make more balls." And they reach out to Hank and they go, "Hey, can you tell Schlem he needs to make more balls?" And Hank goes, "Dude," he goes, "I don't know if you've been hearing this, but man, and we just kind of reached a point where like, okay, we'll make you all happy. That's how we got back to kind of that constant shuffle and flow, because RotoGrip became in demand and it became part of one of the brands that people wanted.
Yeah.
But anyway, so had Hypercell, and again, we had the windows. We actually came out with, I'm trying to think if there was another ball in there or not. I don't believe so. So I'm thinking, man, I got to make a pearlized version of this.
Uh-huh.
So I made the Hypercell skid.
Yeah.
That was one of the worst selling cell balls of all time. And it wasn't because it was ugly, because it was black pearl, purple pearl, and gold pearl.
Yeah.
And I put a pink logo on it. And the reason I used the word skid is because, everybody had always, for the longest time, it's like pearl has just kind of been used on everything. I'm like, what's another version, something different off of pearl? And so I went Hypercell skid because I'm like, oh, it's going to skid through the oil and then bounce off the friction, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Seemed to make total sense. Everybody around here like, oh, man, that's a pretty ball, da, da, da.
Yeah.
Well, the sales absolutely sucked. And so we talked to the sales guys each week, and the sales guys are like, yeah, man, we can't sell this ball. Like, people don't like the pink logo. And I'll never forget, Brett, to this day, it haunts me. Cooper was at a match. Brett Cooper, our sales guys through
he's my rep. So,
Colorado, Texas. Yeah. And Coop goes, Schlem, man, I'm here in Texas, and these ladies came to the matchmaker, and they said they won't buy this ball because they don't want their ball to skid. And I'm like, well, what do they think a pro ball does, bro? And he goes, well, it skids. And I go, did you tell them that? He goes, yeah, but they said they don't want their ball to skid, so they're not buying that ball.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, what do they think of the color? He goes, oh, they thought the color was beautiful. I said, in the pink logo? He goes, oh, they thought it was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't want it because they didn't want their ball to skid. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And sure enough, I mean, the sales, like I said, the sales were terrible because everybody, and that was straight pearl, so the now modern version of that is the nuclear cell. And everybody's like, oh man, this ball's freaking phenomenal. It's awesome. I'm like, it's the modern version of a freaking Hypercell skid. And everybody goes, Hypercell skid? What was that ball? Because the Hypercell fused came out, which everybody loved.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And most people didn't even know it was a hybrid cover. Most people thought that was pearl.
Yeah, thought it was a pearl. Yeah.
I go, no, it's hybrid. And they go, it is? I'm like,
fused.
Yes. Do you not read any marketing or anything like that?
Yeah.
And so, there's just times like that, like I said, where, I mean, you think about Hypercell, as good as Hypercell was and how good Hypercell fused was. But yeah, I put that Hypercell skid right in the middle, and everyone's like, oh, this ball sucks. Yeah, it's a bad name. It's got a pink logo. And I'm like, wait, what? So,
which was really funny because it's got kind of a cult. The skid has kind of a cult following from the people who just kind of ignored or I guess didn't even really ignore them. I like the marketing. I'm a big marketing kind of fan anyway, and so I thought that was great. And then people are asking me when the fuse came out, they're like, well, how does it compare to the skid? Because that ball was great and whatever else. And I'm like
I said,
I can't spend $300 on a ball to
comparatively speaking. If I rough estimate, if I'm not mistaken, it was what we sold to the Hypercell skid was less than half of what we sold to the Hypercell fused.
Yeah.
And the Hypercell itself was a really big seller because at the time there were no big hook balls on the market. And so it found that niche and it filled that. I mean, and it was a while before Storm even caught up to it. It was just one of those things. But yeah, it was just kind of wild that, the Hypercell was a great seller. The fused was a great seller. And then the skid was legit half of either one of those. And I'm like, makes zero sense to me.
It just makes no sense. Yeah.
And then honestly, I can throw a couple, another to you as well. If you remember it goes back to the cage core. And that was a great core that Hank came up with. That was kind of built along that, kind of along the premise of the core that was used in the Defiant series. I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm getting old.
Was the cage in the Menace? Is that, or was that
the cage? Yeah, the cage core was actually in the Sinister.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But it was built on the premise. Hank came up. The reason it had the kind of like rib cage on the outside, and it kind of gave you those different planes. And as good as those balls rolled, both of them, the Sinister was a hybrid, and the Menace was a solid. And purely that was my error because it came back to colors. Sinister. I came up with. It was hybrid. Like I said, it was blue, white pearl, and highlighter yellow pearl.
Yeah.
A little bit of scuff to it, ball rolled phenomenal. And people are like, it's ugly. And then, Menace, I came up with a color combination at the time, the best I could get with the traffic light with red, yellow, green.
Yeah.
Again, didn't turn out pretty, and people are like, that ball's really ugly. and it would that and Hank would be like, hey, by the way, I talked to so and so at such and such distributor, and they're like, tell Schlem whatever he's thinking, don't ever think that again, because I was terrible. And so I learned a lesson, from that. But
Yeah.
it is definitely about shelf appeal when you're catering to the masses. I mean, if it's you take and what's crazy is if you look at the balls that have been great for us over the years, like a high road, the dark blue and black, you almost can't even hardly tell it's a two-color ball.
Yeah.
The Tour is just a solid navy blue. Now the Idol falls in there. The Idol's 2.5 years old, one color purple. There's nothing flashy about those bowling balls. But they're just because of the shape and reaction they make to the masses. That's where it falls into. It's a accepted, and I guess you don't. I guess in the words of marketing, you don't turn anybody off. That a one color, it's not too flashy, doesn't draw too much attention.
Mm.
People might know what you're throwing, but it's not, it's not crazy. It's not out of, too far out of the box kind of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, that's kind of where, and that was honestly, and that was one of those things too. I had to make sure that, cause I had a couple pretty wild and crazy color combinations for this Rubicon. I'm just sitting there looking at it on my desk, and I'm like, man, that one's kind of sexy. But again, I know where my opinions got me in the past with some of the duds I've, and I didn't want to go because I knew how great this ball was going to be. And so, with the Rubicon, and Hank even threw out some color. He's, oh, dude, do this, this, and this. And then that color comes up, and I go, bro, I said, that's ugly. We can't do that. And he goes, yeah, you're right. It's terrible shelf appeal. And so it took me a while to, and then I just kind of, honestly, I went back where the Rubicon came from, because I felt this was going to be something big and something that's going to be a game changer, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Color wise, it's along the lines of the original cell. The black, the dark blue, and the lighter blue, but subtle, not a huge transition. Some of them swirl a little bit different, but it's a massive. And so far, everybody goes, this ball surprised me, and then two, everybody goes, and the color's really good, and I'm like, like plain blah. But again, when you're looking for certain ball motion, and again to the masses, you've got to make that. It's got to aesthetically appeal to a wide variety of players. So
So let me I didn't have this on the questions, but let me chase a rabbit trail while we're talking about that. Another one that's kind of the same.
Is this like a Mad Hatter? Like, are we chasing the Mad Hatter? What's going on? A rabbit hole?
Dude,
come on, man.
Everything connects in my head, so I can't hardly get through a thought without something going this way and something going this way. And by the time I chase a couple rabbit trails, I forget what I was thinking about in the first place. So, but anyway, Wild Streak. That's another one that's one of my favorites right now, and that's when you talk about the core size concept, and people look at it and say, well, it's a 260 RG, it's going to go forever. Well, it doesn't, because the overall mass is still smaller, and so when people watch me throw it to begin with, they're like, well, that doesn't act like a 260 RG, and I'm like, and it's another one of those that's kind of a darker color palette like the Rubicon, but for some reason, it just doesn't seem like it has really caught on. And I don't want to get into, we can get into sales numbers or whatever else, but I'm like, that's one of the best ones in the catalog right now. And people look at it, they're kind of like, I don't know.
Right. And it is one of those ones that it has been kind of slow. And again, we got, it came out the fall of last year. And once I've kind of explained it numerous times, because again, it falls into, okay, people, everybody's guilty of it, just like this Rubicon thing. And when this came out, because we hadn't had a weight block ball on the rotor grip side in a while. The last weight block we had done, and I think to make sure everybody at home understands too, the difference between a weight block and a core is the weight block is just the actual dense material wrapped in cover stock. So there's no outer core layer built around it. So that's what we call weight block balls. And so the high road is obviously the most famous, weight block ball of all time. And the last weight ball we had, we actually had a couple balls. We had the unhinged and hysteria, and Hank had built that part off of. It actually had high road numbers. The numbers were identical, RG and diff, and the shape was almost close. It's just that changing some of the mass, some of the mass placement in it, but the numbers were the same. And the people that had them, the people that got hysteria, which was a solid shiny, and then we had unhinged, which was a straight pearl. People loved them. They're like, "Oh man, this ball's so awesome," but they just never caught on. And again, Roto Group was in a different point in time in that era, if you will. We hadn't quite established ourselves to where we are now. And so I mentioned to Hank, I said, "Hey, dude," I said, "Man, I think it's time if we could get out another weight." But he's like, I had this idea, I've been working on it. And again, it took a while to get it dialed in. But yeah, it ended up coming out it's a couple points higher than a high road, but the overall core mass is way smaller than what a high road is.
Yeah.
And then he goes, he goes, "What do you think you want to put on it?" And I'm like, and that's when it triggered in my head based on having something different. That's where Sure Tracks came from. Yeah. I go, "Man, that phase 2 has been pretty good for a lot of people. Yeah. Can we go along that chemistry?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, absolutely. We can do this and we can change the ratio here." And so we adjusted a few different times, because it's along that same chemistry, but we branched off of it to get to where the Sure Tracks is. And lots of testing, and we got to it, and I'm like, and all the testing we did was like, wow, this ball is good. Yeah. Like, but as soon as like our pro staffers drill it and everything, they're like, this ball doesn't do anything. And I'm like, well, especially the tour guys. And I'm like, well, how'd you drill it? And they're like, oh, I went with a 6-inch pin and this and that. And I go, when was the last time you threw a ball that was 260? Yeah. And every one of them go, well, I don't know. I'm like, why don't you try drilling it to flare a little bit more? Yeah. I said, and then explain the cover stock stuff. I said, try to drill a little bit, drill a 4-inch pin, drill a 3.5-inch pin. I said, but the thing is, it's not going to hook at your toe because it's 260. And I said, the other part of it is you're going to benefit from the weight block dynamics, like you mentioned, because when you drill it, even with a big thumb, like a switch grip or nit, you're taking it out as cover stock material. You rarely penetrate that weight block. Yeah. And as soon as everybody did that, they're like, oh man, this ball's awesome. Like, oh, we should have this a long time ago. I'm like, well, you've had it for a few months, you idiots. Why didn't you ask somebody? So and that was, beginning of this tour season. We're talking January and February. They'd already had them for a few months. And then once they started figuring out, the guys started to add them into their bag, and, then the tour stopped. So it's definitely an option. It's definitely different. And I'll tell you, one of the good things for it that Pro Shops finally figured out, because after I'd done a few videos and a few shows, is that the Wild Streak actually works well for those down and in players. Yeah. Because it gives them enough cover stock, but it lets them keep it online and keep it in front of them without wanting to break too early. But that gives them a little bit of pop down lane. But, for those people like me who have like 2 revs, it'll let you kind of close your angles down in the front and then kind of get that shape. And some of the people that got, we had, I think the highest series, somebody had 888 with a Wild Streak. And we had a stretch right as COVID happened. It was like 3 weeks in a row. We had honor scores coming to the website. There was that 888, somebody had 860, and somebody had 850. Yeah. And Hank goes, man, somebody's going to shoot 900 with that ball. I go, man, the way it's looking here, the consumers are just, these scores are zip codes coming in. And then all of a sudden, poof, the world came to a stop. And yeah, the ball's still there. It's still in the product line. It's in the catalog. We're still going to make it. Because it's unique and different. And again, that's, like this Rondure core and the Rubicon, it's unique and different. It fits in a line well. And that's the other part too of now when you look at, say, our HP3 line, we talked about the 3 cover stocks, but then you get in the cores. We've got low RG, high diff. We've got high RG, medium diff. And now we've got low RG, medium to high diff with a small intermediate. We're building variety in the cores and the covers. So we're kind of that HP3 window is getting really big, and we're going to make it bigger. Because there's, like I said, there's more technology and more stuff that's coming. Like I said, Hank and those guys are working on some cool stuff, and you will see. I know the Storm Boys are working on some stuff that they're working on a mild asymmetric, and again, it's just our first crack at it. So, you look at where that falls in with the the Rondure comes in 11 split. you know, 0.011, and then all our big ASIMs all start at 0.015, there's still 1 or 2 points either direction off of that 10 that we can kind of, as I've explained to people, anybody who plays golf, it kind of fits into these balls are actually kind of like your fairway woods, if you will.
Okay.
Because before you could take your, whether it was your 3-iron or 4-iron that were maybe there were hybrids, in your golf bag, and you had that window of you could hit the ball pretty far, but and then if you took one of those, say you took your 3 or 4-iron and you put an extra hole in it, well, then you made it like a 3-wood or a 5-wood. It never was as strong as your big ball, like your driver.
Yeah.
But man, it covered that gap. Well, now you take the balance hole thing out of it. You don't have that option. Now everybody goes. And what's funny is the number of people that have, they go in and they're like, "Hey, what am I supposed to do with this August thing? Just go fill your weight hole." I said, and I even explained in the pro shops. I said, it's going to be more crucial now based on the layouts that you understand the person's PAP and the pin to PAP distance in order to make the ball flare and read in the right spot. Because now you plug these weight holes, everybody's going to go, "Hey, my ball quit hooking," because you haven't changed the dynamics to increase that core torque. And, if it's a 4.5 or a 5-inch pin for somebody who doesn't have a rev rate, now they realize how much of an added bonus that balance hole really was. And now they go, "Hey, I might as well just drill a new ball." Well, okay, drill a new ball, but make sure you get the right layout in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me see, what else do I got on here? I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, just kind of taking a big rabbit trail. You mentioned you took over the RotoGrip thing in 2012, and it was kind of just there. And then, I've always liked how you kind of just go for it. You have big, bold stuff, and you're like, well, let's try it out. And I think that is kind of cool on that side. It seems like it fits your personality. Number one, it's like, yeah, this is big, this is bold, let's go for it. But you also have a little bit more flexibility than like a Storm does, to where they've got to really kind of control things a little bit more, and you've got more flexibility to say, yeah, let's try it out. And if it sucks, then whatever. But you end up hitting on some big stuff. And
Right.
What was your first big release when you took over RotoGrip and you start playing with stuff? What was your first it ball that kind of put RotoGrip on the map?
Honestly, it was when I took over in 2012, or when I became brand manager in 2012. You're right in that part of, as it was really kind of a culmination. We had the year before we had started down the lines with we had a different ad agency for RotoGrip, and after doing some market studies and some reviews and stuff, it was one of those things that trying to figure out how RotoGrip fit in the mix. Okay. Because in the industry, yeah, you were spot on as far as Storm. Storm is the I don't know, kind of the titleist of bowling, if you will. It's used by many and all. It's more of a we've actually we've joked around with some marketing stuff, internally. The mindset of Storm is very clean cut, professional, kind of James Bond-esque. There was technology, and sophistication, but nothing too extreme or too wild. And that's where the mindset kind of came in with the agency, as far as, and they did some study groups and some other stuff. And this was before I was even involved in it. And they're like, "Oh yeah, well, this and this and this." And so we started down kind of a dark, an alternative path was really kind of the direction. And back in the day, you've probably been around long enough to remember, RotoGrip was king of them all.
King of them all.
That was a motto, tagline, kind of a thing that was around for a really long time. But my thing is, when I was quick to finally shut that down, and I go, can somebody tell me how you become king of them all when you really haven't had like one great selling bowling ball? Like, it'd be like, I think my example at the time, it'd be like, I think, and this, again, we're going back, 2012, and I'm like, it'd be like Strata or Dunlop saying that they're like the best golf ball in golf.
Yeah.
Nobody really, they're like what you hit on a range, And I'm like, it's kind of a bold, deal. And Hank's like, well, again, going back to the old school roots, he goes, well, the bowling ball specialist and this and that. I go, bro, we're decades removed from that. And I said, and at the time, and what's funny is I still get this is, the tagline, and it's probably one of those things. We're probably in a spot where it's probably time to change the tagline again. We went to own it, because you wanted it short, you wanted it sweet, you wanted to just kind of like, hey, I'm here. What's up? Let's go.
Yeah.
Kind of in your face, but not too crazy. And of course, then it turned into like Aaron's rent to own and like TurboTax, and everybody else used that motto, and it's used on like every sort of marketing there is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you can't just like register a trademark a tagline like that. I mean, you can, but we're not Nike. Like, we don't have bazillions of dollars just laying around and go, oh yeah,
whatever you want. Yeah.
Oh, that'll be $5 billion. Oh yeah, we'll take 2 of those. Yeah, no, not how the bowling world works. So, but getting into that kind of alternative and edgy thing, and so I accepted it. And again, like you said, my personality, I'm definitely not normal. Definitely, from the mohawk, that's rocking the hair there, bro. I had mohawk. I've now kind of morphed into another new hairstyle again, back to an older one I had. Different colors of hair. I've worn earrings since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It is what it is. Be you, the A&L kind of thing. And so, as going down this direction as far as marketing goes with RotoGrip, we were kind of dark and edgy, and it's like, oh, you're going to go after, at the time, in 2012. Again, RotoGrip was still trying to get reestablished. So it was, and Brian Graham had just went to Brunswick, and that's when DV8 came up. And they go, Schlem, your goal is to ultimately chase Hammer, but right now we need you to go head to head with DV8, and then you got to go after Hammer. Because Storm again is always been up here, for a while now. It's been up doing this thing, and I'm like, okay, fair enough, challenge accepted. I'm like, let's do this, let's go after it. And as we went down that path for a couple of years, and it's like, it was, we had gained a little bit, because like I said, the first thing was going to that every 6-month schedule that kind of helped establish things. But the marketing and stuff like that, and the more I kind of focused in on it, and I'm like, I've been around, like I said, the industry, since I was a kid, and I'm like, man, it's almost a little too dark and twisted, and then Hammer went down a path, and they lost some followers and people with some of their, you think about their badass and bad intentions and some of their marketing strategy, and and DV8 was dark and twisted, and pro shops were like, yeah, I got consumers come in there like, what the hell is that? No, I don't want that. So, but we were trying to go that way, and so that's when I kind of pulled back a little bit and kind of steered it a little bit different direction and started down another path. I mean, still not Storm, but kind of, I think the word unique kind of fits better as opposed to like the alternative, like dark and twisted and just kind of beat you in the head with it. And because when I finally was given the authority to kind of tell the ad agency of, I'd actually gone to Dave Sims, our president, and I said, I'm really struggling with like ball names and some of these marketing strategies. And he goes, why is that? And I go, man, I'm throwing a name out. I'm like, Betsy, who bowls the Tuesday morning senior league.
Yeah.
Who has 2 grandkids that love bowling, that are in high school bowling, and she's going to go buy them bowling balls. Is she going to go in and really buy a ball named this?
Yeah.
This marketing strategy? And he goes, yeah, I guess you're probably right. I guess never really thought of it that way. We were just kind of forcing you down this alternative dark. I go, yeah. And so that's when I kind of relinquished and kind of pulled back a little bit and kind of, like I said, steered it from that. And as soon as we kind of went that way, that's when things really kind of blew up a little bit. And people started like, oh, hey, and again, it comes back to colors. And, again, I've made some bad colors, I admit. But having some names that people can relate to that are, kind of easy, then helping getting a little bit more so into the logo design. I mean, because again, the bowling ball itself is actually a marketing piece. It's, as it's sitting on a shelf in a pro shop, there's got to be some shelf appeal. There's got to be some sexiness, again, without, getting too wild and crazy. You still got to catch somebody's eye, and it's got to perform. There's all these different half assets, but then the marketing, it gets into, there's so many different strategies and ideas and directions you can go. And again, Storm kind of does its own thing. It's very, whatever. And RotoSchlem kind of done. And I've floated the marketing different directions, and I'm even taking a new direction coming up. I can't tell you what that is, but I've kind of got a new flow and a new vibe. And again, because I think it's one of those things, the way I see it, like in all facets of life, you've got to kind of change. As a term that it's become normal for us around here of late, is you got to ebb and flow, because you don't know what the market's going to be. You don't know what's going to happen next. So I think you got to kind of change and veer and float with the changing times. And that's where I'm going with some of the stuff coming up. But yeah, so it's been fun. It's cool. It's still a challenge. Again, working on some of the stuff I'm working on. And like I said, and more importantly, Chad McLean and I, we chit chat all the time because, he's the technical director on the Storm side, and he handles, all doing the Storm balls and then all the OEM balls. And he does OEM balls for Rotogrip. And, now he's also involved with, now we got the global added in the mix. And so when it comes into colors, there's only so many colors you can have. And then it gets into, we've both been spending a lot more time, probably in the last calendar year, in the lab, because it gets into now of trying to come up with different micas and different things to make colors that we haven't used before, or, mix this with that. And it's like, oh, what if we try this and that? And so, and like I said, our tech team, our guys, they're just over. I mean, they're with all the catalog balls we got now for 3 brands, and then all the international balls for 3 brands.
Yeah.
Again, there's only so many colors in the color palette. And, so what's funny is now it's kind of a battle with me and Chad. So the company's like, hey, what do you got over there? For the longest time. And that was, and I'll let you in on here's a little side note secret, when I took over, and then they're like, oh, Schlem, what do you think of this? And, like I said, even though I was in charge, I kind of had restraints, but as they started taking the ropes off and letting me kind of roam free, I started coming up with some color combos. Man, I had probably those first couple years, there was probably 5 color options that I had picked out that were going to be Rutger balls, and Bill Crispin would be like, oh, that's a good looking ball. That's a Storm ball.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, what? Like, and Marty C goes, no, you can't have that color. We're using that for Storm. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I have to totally do it. I was like, oh man, this is like good. Or, be Dave or Hank or somebody like, well, that's a good looking ball. That should be a Storm ball. Yeah. Next thing you know, the ball's off my desk. The Storm guys got it. They're running. They got their next ball going. I'm like,
yeah.
Well, damn, that sucks.
I know.
But yeah, so now it's into a battle with me and Chad as far as, I'm working on some new stuff and he's working on new stuff. He's like, hey, what you got there? And so I always walk by his desk. I'm like, what you got there? He goes, well, it's this and this. I go, well, you can't go that way because I've already got this going. He goes, well, I'm going to steal it. I go, no, you ain't, dude. I've already got a logo on it. It's mine. So now it's a contest, so you got to get the color and get a logo on it, and then it's guaranteed to be yours. So that's the friendly competition we got going here at HQ. Because again, colors are, man, it's just tough. You want something, again, you got to have that shelf appeal. But again, you and even then, if you, like I said, some of the ones I mentioned that, come up with stuff that, oh, that's different, that's unique. Like my thing is always, and that was one of the things I had to fight for as well, being able to do 3 colors through the whole product line. Mm-hmm. I go, if you guys are going to not allow Rotogrip to have smell in the bowling ball, I need to have color. Yeah. Like I need that option. And, even then, because as we know, when you go to a pro shop, how many, and I relate to pro shop guys, and Hank and I used to laugh about this all the time. Uh-huh. People come in, they're like, oh, I want that new ball. Okay, which one do you want? The one so-and-so was throwing. You got a name of it? No, I don't remember the name. Remember the color?
That's the best one.
I can't remember the color. So if you can give them a color that they remember, that was always one of the, one of my pro shop days. And I'm thinking at that time, we're talking in the early 90s, I'm thinking, hey, why can't these guys come up with colors that people come in and go, so they remember the color. And so that's always kind of been a focus of mine, to have a color or one color that sticks out that, even if they come in and they go, oh, it's got a bright pink spot, so of late, like halo pearl. Like people would be like, pro shop would be like, oh yeah, yeah, that one with the pink in it. Yep. Okay, sweet. Yeah. But if you don't have an identifier, if they don't know the name, they're like, well, what brand? Ooh, I don't know. That's a tough question. Is
Yeah.
it storm? Is it rotor grip? I don't know. Does it smell? Ooh, I don't know. Well, now you don't know a color, you
Uh,
don't know a name, you don't know if it has smell. You're kind of like, yeah, I need a little bit more help here.
Yeah, that's
So,
one of those things where I've been in a pro shop for a long time, and so yeah, I've always the marketing thing, how people tick. That's what really got me interested because you'd see things as like, man, this is gonna fly off the wall, and then nothing happens, and then some are like this, and then yeah, you have somebody come in and say, yeah, well, I've had this ball for a really long time, and I'm kind of looking to replace. I want something similar, and I'm like, okay, well, what was it? Well, I mean, it was a storm. I'm like, damn it.
like, okay, well, that narrows it
But
down.
but yeah, and then the other thing too with the colors and all that, I talk to Chad every once in a while, and I'm like, man, I've got a bad habit with these OEM and international balls, and I'm sitting here staring a bunch of them. And stuff like the Super Idol, I had to have one of those because that's pink and teal, and that's amazing. And then the Halo Burn is like one of my favorites ever. Period. International, domestic, whatever else, and that one's sitting here staring at me. And then I've got all these different phases, and then I see other stuff popping up on the international list and a bunch of the idols that come out, and I'm like, man, you guys got to slow down here.
Well,
Because
and that's what people ask us all the time. And I think that's what, that is actually a cultural thing. It's just a
yeah,
different way of thinking in life. Because you mentioned the idols, and that's when people say like, "Oh, when's the next idol coming?" I'm like, "Well, we've had three of them now. And obviously the Idol Pro is gone now, but we've got the original Idol, Idol Pearl." And they go, "Yeah, but what are all these other ones?" I go, "Well, internationally in Asia, I said they're already on their sixth different idol."
yeah,
And the reason being is that culture in Korea and Japan is they want the latest and greatest. They don't necessarily like when, like for us, of that series, the Idol came out in March of 2018.
yeah,
So it's 2.5 years now that's been out. And they ordered that Idol once. Once they sell out of it, they don't want it again,
uh-huh,
no matter how great it is. That's what we. And what's crazy is every once in a while they'll take a small order of a high road, but the high road's been in the line for 11 years.
yeah,
So it's one of those things. They go, well, what's the difference in this or this or this? And we're like, okay, well, the Idol Pearl that you like, yep, it's just a different color. And they
yeah,
go, what do you mean? I go, that's what they want. They want new. It's like their cell phone technology. It's like everything else. If you visit those countries, it's always, the next thing is like, anywhere from 3 to 6 months down the line is brand new. And again, it's the exact
that's
same,
the exact same thing. But
exact same tennis shoe. And
uh,
all Nike does is they change the color of the swoosh. It could be
yeah,
a black shoe with a white swoosh, and then all of a sudden they come back and go, "Oh, we want new." So it's a black shoe with a pink swoosh.
yeah,
Nothing changed, but then oh, we want another one. So the next one is black with the neon green.
yeah,
So we are forced into that, and so the number of OEM balls is absolutely ridiculous.
yeah,
Like I said, well, hell, even the UFO, I keep getting all the time like, oh, this UFO Pearl. I go, the UFO 2, and they go, wait, there's a UFO 2. I go, yeah, and a UFO Pearl, and they go, wait, what? I go, yeah, international balls.
yeah,
And they're already working on, they've got another one in the works, and then they already just requested another one after that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's just how they work. I mean, they love the UFO, but again, once they sell out of their whatever they order, they
mm,
go, okay, next one. Well, how about you guys reorder one that sells so good? No, 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 old. We want new
yeah,
every single time. So again, that's just you think about the number of people that we'll look at the number of people that how many IQ tours they've drilled or high roads they've drilled or now idols.
yeah,
Our tour
uh-huh,
guys, some of our tour guys, take like Prather and Simo. I've got one actually. I have one of Prather's $100,000 idols on my desk
mm-hmm,
that he autographed. But those guys and even the girls, they, once
right,
an idol reaches a certain spot, they drill a fresh one. They're like, oh, I got to have a fresh one. And then I've also, or even like Simo,
oh
I've got a fresh one. This one's got 200 games on it.
yeah,
This one's got 100 games but shined. This one's
uh-huh,
because what that and even your consumers, the people are like, oh yeah, I've had an idol now for a couple of years. I just drilled a fresh one, because I've always liked that ball since I got it. So
yeah,
that's just a thing here. But like I said, in Japan and Korea, It'd be, because then that's why we came out with the green one. Then the green idol came out. They're like, oh, we want the same as the original idol, but different. Okay, how about green?
Yeah.
Okay, we want.
My wife's got one, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's solely in the whole reason why. So it's just a culture and society thing in those countries. So
yeah.
but yeah, I hear that all the time. There's plenty of people that reach out and go, man, why don't we get those pretty balls that you guys rely overseas stuff?
Yeah.
And the funny is, a lot of times they'll tell us what they want, or they go, we want a 3-color ball, but we know we want the one color to be this, and you guys pick the other 2 colors. And so Chad's got so many of them going on, he just starts throwing colors in at them, and the combination, if it turns out great. But and there's been times where him and I were actually talking about it yesterday. It was pretty funny. He was working on some storm balls, and he asked me some questions, and I told him, I said, hey, dude, I said, go. So we started looking at some of the international balls over the last couple of years for storm, looking for color ideas and color options that we could use again that never saw a domestic market.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes we have to do that. We got to go to our own well and go, oh yeah, I'm looking for a new ball, but hey, let's go surfing what we've done overseas. And they go, yeah, well, that was a good color. Let's try that one. So.
Yeah, that's like I said, I've got a problem. I got a bunch of these.
Well, you're not the only one. There's plenty of other people that are right there with you that, they're like, oh, I collect these and I collect, hey, more power to you.
Yeah.
Like I said, the UFO is one of the ones, and, all the different cells we've had over the years, and all the different high roads over the years, and all the different IQs over the years. Marvels, the Marvel Max Elite, the Marvel Elite, the Marvel Max Code inverted whatever, the Marvel 300. And the funny one is for us, and we joke about all the time, is the Domination. The Domination was one of the first asymmetrical balls. It dates back to early 2000s. They just ordered. There was a Domination 2020 going to that market.
Yeah.
And they've been using. They love that core, and it's been something we've given them now for 15 years.
Uh-huh.
So I think there's over 20 different versions of a Domination now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they keep doing the virtuals over there too. They like the gravities or the virtuals or whatever else. So yeah, those are still going pretty good.
Like, oh, well, you guys make all these. It's not fair. And like, okay, well, did you have one of these? Yep. Well, it's the same ball. We did, sometimes it's change one color, sometimes it's change all the colors, but it's the exact same formula. So, yep.
All right, so there's one more ball that I want to talk about before I let you go, and there's 2 really quick questions, and then we'll talk about the ball here. So, let's see. If you could instantly reinstate 3 Roto Grip balls, let's just say your tenure, let's just say since 2012, since you started climbing the ladder back up here, if you could reinstate 3 of your Roto Grip balls, what would they be? I'll tell you mine maybe while you're thinking. No Rules Pearl, one of my big favorites. And there was actually a couple that I missed out on. I was an advisory staffer the first in 2015, and so I missed the Outcry and the Hysteria and the Haywire. I think didn't all those 3 or was the Hysteria the year before with the Sinister or okay?
Yeah, those were all kind of that little bit of a window. Yep.
Okay, so I missed those 3, and I was kind of bummed out. I drilled a couple of them for my wife, but so that one, I was a big fan of the Daredevil Trick, and so I mean all the Daredevils period, but the Daredevil Trick and then the Hectic was kind of I like pink stuff anyway, but yeah, kind of on the lower end thing. But yeah, those 3 for me, the No Rules Pearl and the Trick, and those are all within the last couple of years. I think I missed a few of the years, but. Those are 3 that really stuck out for me.
Gotcha. I think, one of the balls I talked about before, I think because it was just a fan favorite for so long, and I think, I could probably reintroduce it in the same color and the same name and everything, and everyone would be like, oh, I'm glad it's back. It would be the Hypercell. Because we still every once in a while get the request, even though how great the UFO is. And again, it's along the same chemistry as far as cover shot goes, and the core is actually just a touch more dynamic and more shaped down lane. But there's a lot of people that still go, man, I really miss my hypercell. Can you guys make that?
Mm-hmm.
Or hypercell fused? That's another one I get all the time. Using that cell part. One ball that that I tried spinning a couple different directions, and then we've kept building off of it even into today's modern line, because of the core numbers that are actually in the MVP in that Neutron NXT core, is the Wrecker. The Wrecker was a staple for quite a few years and a fan favorite. And I told Hank this last go round, we kind of modified and kept changing off of it, similar, like when we went to the show offs and some other stuff. And, then we got back to this Neutron NXT, which is basically a very close shape. It's just rounded more. It doesn't have like the straighter edges on the top of the block. But he got the core numbers. He goes, dude, I got the core numbers exactly the same for you. And that's why I call it the Neutron NXT, in the MVP series, and now more currently MVP Attitude and MVP Pearl. But yeah, that Wrecker was, I had Wreck 'em and Wreck It. But they never, the actual Wrecker, and even with the Wreck It being a hybrid as well, but sanded, the Wrecker, the blue and white Wrecker was the one that it just kind of stuck. And it was kind of wild. Funny, and we're long removed from it, but so I can tell this funny story. And again, you were, like you said, advisory at the time. Do you know what the Wrecker was before it was the Wrecker?
Not really, but I always thought that Storm's Punch Out was fairly similar on lane as far as reaction stuff, but maybe not.
So one of the first things I did when I made that Wrecker, it actually was the Rising Star.
Oh yeah.
It's the exact same. It was the exact same. So we had the Rising Star, Shooting Star, exact same core, core that Deacon made, and all I did, and the Rising Star was hybrid. All I did was repackage it and rename it.
Yeah,
I used the exact same formulation in hybrid, changed the color from black and gold to blue and white, and called it a Wrecker. And we sold 5 times as many of the Wrecker as we did of the Rising Star.
Yeah.
And that was the exact same. And Hank goes, dude, I don't know how you did that. And I'm like, not that the Rising Star was a bad color. It was just that at that point in time, where Rotogrip was, you know what I'm saying? And so that was a funny story that I like to throw out there. And people are like, no way. And then they go back and look, they go, you're right. It's the exact same core. I'm like, I know, because I was the one that put it together. It's the exact same everything. All I did was recolor it and rename it. But, another one that fits in that bring back thing, I think the crazy part, and you mentioned one of the great asymmetrical pearls with the No Rules Pearl, but the one that I still enjoy, and it still comes up in conversation around here because we actually have a plaque of it. Have you been to I don't know if you've been to headquarters?
Oh no, I've been trying to work it out sometime here, but
once you get here and you see you see the stuff behind me, we've got a lot of stuff framed and hanging throughout the office, and we've got some different plaques and things. And one of the things, there's a plaque hanging up. Actually, it was by Hank's office. I think it's still up that way somewhere because it's not in here. With one of the first asymmetrical pearls that I was involved in, which was Ball of the Year at that point in time.
Yeah.
But was the worst selling of the 4 Defiant series, and that was a Totally Defiant.
Oh, yeah.
The red, yellow, and black one. That was the asymmetrical Ball of the Year, voted in the magazine by all the fans, writers, ball testers, whatever.
Yeah.
And I had the chuckle part is, and Bill still laughs about it. He goes, because we had some other, the balls of the year, like we've got one up here over on this side that is 2011 No Holds Barred. The ball of the year was a Virtual Gravity, so, and again, 2011, it was, greatest ball. But so it was 2012 or 20, I think it was 2013, actually 2013 when I did that. 2013, it was the ball of the year. but it was the worst selling of the 4 Defiance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and everybody goes, and Bill still shakes his head. He goes, "How is that ball of the year?" And it was the worst selling of the 4. I go, "No idea, but the people loved it." So
Yeah.
we'll just go with it, man. But that was a really good asymmetrical pearl. But like you said, the no rules pearl, with the 900 and a lot of big honor scores, yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, so the Rising Star, that was one kind of interesting thing that'll kind of hippity hop into my other into my the ball I want to talk about. But somebody actually asked me that. They said, "Well, I had a Rising Star back when, and so what does it compare to now?" And so I go look up the Rising Star, and I'm like, "Huh, okay." So yeah, I did actually connect the dots because I went back and I had to kind of research that, and I'm like, "Okay, wow, yeah, this was the wrecker," and so we kind of
Right. So
got
yeah,
on
so
with
if you're
that.
looking, if somebody questions about a Rising Star currently, it would be an MVP Attitude actually, because that's hybrid.
Yeah.
And even though it's sanded, you can shine it up, and you're going to get just a little bit more motion than what a Rising Star was.
Uh,
Not a ton. I mean, it'll be a couple boards, but because cover stock technology has advanced since. I mean, the Rising Star was hell. That was back in the end of 2010 or early 2011.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, and that kind of, because the core numbers are exactly the same. Like I said, that's the reason why it's called the Neutron NXT core. Because Hank goes, "Dude, I nailed your core numbers spot on exactly, just by rounding those edges." And kind of still, we started with that Neutron core and just made
Yeah.
some modifications to it to update the process to how we make bowling balls now. And yeah, that's why I mean those roll the MVP Pearl, MVP Attitude are great rolling bowling balls.
Yeah.
For that price point. But again, it's a tough fit in that price point because the market is so different now. We've got our entry level balls, we got the hustles. On the Storm side, you got the hotlines that are kind of a step down. But it's kind of a battle for us because our competitors are, if you will, they close out a lot of big high end balls in that same price point.
Uh,
So that's what makes it tough for us, and
yeah.
distributors and pro shops tell us that all the time. It's like, well, we're not going to make low RG. We're not just going to come out with a Rubicon and go, oh yeah, it's a HP2 price point. No, there's too
Yeah.
much, when you spend a year and a half working on a core,
Yeah.
it's not usually one you put in your lowest price point. So
Uh,
there's just a different strategy there of how we do business. And but yeah, it's like I said, the Attitude. We actually just had we've had some honor scores coming in of late with the Attitude. Now that people are starting to get back to league bowling's finally starting to start back up. Some of them are already a week or two in. A lot of folks wait until after Labor Day. So that's coming up this weekend, and then in the next couple of weeks, leagues will fire up in spots. Again, everybody's got a different protocol or a different what do they have to do in order to get in the lanes. It's wearing a mask all the time or only on the concourse or the dividers between the lanes or bowling every other pair, or whatever the case may be. Some are doing in shifts. But like I said, we should start seeing some more traffic. And I think once people get back and, you look at, there's still people that haven't got to throw the new hustles or the MVP Attitude. And actually, there's still a lot of people that haven't even got to throw the nuclear cell because the nuclear cell came out the week before everything shut down. We talk about it here all the time, and because I was actually on the road, I was on the East Coast at the UBA event. When everything shut down on that Friday, March 13th or whatever, Friday the 13th, that was the day the Axiom came out.
Yeah.
So the Axiom, same boat. Axiom and nuclear cell were, one was technically born that day, and the other one was a week old. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, everybody, go home and lock your doors. And some people are still in that same boat. Some people are still locked at home. Like I said, California is still shut down. Although New York's slowly opening up. Washington is now in a spot to where they're going to be opening up over the course of the next few months.
Yeah.
But New Mexico is closed. There's still parts of North Carolina is still closed. Michigan has been closed this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to hear today. The rumor in Michigan is that they'll be able to finally open Tuesday of next week, or start to open in a small capacity.
Yeah.
But again, these places have been completely doors locked since, that second week of March. So again, you can't expect, there's some consumers that just like, oh, hey, what's new? And even though it's, we've come out with some new balls since, the latest and greatest, but
Yeah.
to some folks walking in, they're like, hey, I was really looking forward to that nuclear cell, because of that hypercell fused, or, hey, I want to try that Axiom because that looked like it was this. We're just kind of in that spot. So, we'll see it probably by the end of this month. I think we'll have a better kind of be in tune with what, what the United States is kind of going through again, because other countries have, the European market has been open this whole time. Asia's been open this whole time. Although Korea is in the midst of they did have a shutdown in some of their major cities. They had a recent kind of flare up, so their leader shut some cities, and I don't know, they call them like regions or counties. They shut some spots down for 8 days. They're like, 8 days, we're going to knock this back down. And what's crazy is, they're had reported 300 cases in each day for the last, like week and a half. And it's 300 cases out of like 45 million people, where like here in Utah, we average 300 cases, but we got 3 million people and we're still like green, just kind of going with the flow. And it's like 3 million, 45 million.
Yeah.
And they shut everything down for 8 days. Like, you got to stay home. You can't do anything, but hey, that's a different culture, different world. And, they've already kind of, they're going to reevaluate, I guess, I think it's Monday or Tuesday for them. They're going to reevaluate, and they could open back up, or they'll ease back into it. But again, nothing really major. No, there was no really major shutdowns in some of those countries. So, ball sales actually for us in those international markets have increased considerably, because bowling is a thing people can go do. So while here, like I said, we still got North Carolina. North Carolina is still, for the most part, that entire state still shut down. So again, people, and if you're friends with any of those folks out on the East Coast or different spots, people are, they'll drive in 2 or 3 hours to go practice 3 games or 5 games. And then they'll drive back home. I mean, if you want to bowl, you want to bowl, but you can't go do it any place close. You got to find a state that's open, so never in a million years did we think this was ever going to happen. I don't think you could have said, oh, by the way, well, this, there's going to come a time where you've got to drive 5 hours to go bowl a few games. You'd be like, wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, it's still all over the place here with a couple certain counties, because I bowl in, we're kind of the Kansas City area. I'm in Topeka, and then Lawrence is kind of in between us. But we've got for the different counties, we still have different rules. Like, there's some places in Kansas City where there's no spectators. And then in Lawrence, you can only pull the mask down when you're drinking, eating, or actually in the act of bowling. Here in Topeka, we can, as soon as you get in the bowler's area and kind of at your table, then you can take the mask off. And so it's kind of interesting trying to remember what's going on with that. But yeah, I've got a buddy from North Carolina. He's actually the James Niffen, the Southeast UBA heavyweight champ. That's
okay.
They haven't been able to bowl, and so he's actually flown in a couple times. He flew in we've got pretty big, big thing with Dave Waswo that used to do the Bowlers Show, and a guy that they have tournaments around here, and so he's flown in for a weekend. He's actually coming in next weekend for a big tournament. Then he's flying back out. We've got something going on in Wichita, so yeah, he can't do a whole lot of actual bowling in North Carolina, so he's getting some cheap fares from Southwest or whatever and getting over here so he can actually bowl. So
yeah, I mean, and that's what, like you mentioned UVA, there's quite a few other folks in that region, and then we know some pro shops, we got some staffers, and just know some other people that they're either they go to some spots in South Carolina practice, or people are if you want competitive juices, some people go down to Florida or go over to Georgia, and that's where they're going to bowl. And hell, there's even there's people from New York going all the way down to Florida, because there's so many different events going. And people want to bowl. I mean, that's just kind of the thing. And it's like I said, it's crazy that, people are making the trek all the way down the coast. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to Florida to bowl for a week. We're like, wait, what? And like, oh yeah, they got this sweeper and that sweeper. And, I can't go bowl here. And then like Anthony Pepe, hell, he lives in New York, but he's bowling a league in Connecticut. Like
Uh,
he's literally driving to another state to go bowl league. And it's like an hour and 20 minutes each way, but he's like, hey, I need to bowl league. So that's what
yeah.
I'm going to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up. Had a nice conversation here. I appreciate your time, and I know that you got once again it's Rubicon release day. Assuming I get this up
It is.
today, if not tomorrow, I'll have a for everybody out there watching. I've got a live stream. We'll do some Q&A and we'll talk about some stuff. And but I really appreciate your time. This was a whole lot of fun because I like talking this type of stuff anyway. So this is great to talk shop and whatever else. So. Thanks. Appreciate your time. Can't wait to see what you got coming next. And yeah, we'll see you sometime. Hopefully I can make it out there once this whole virus thing quiets down. I was gonna we drive to Nationals every year. Yeah, and so we drive through. We're not too far from Brigham City when we drive through, and so that was the plan actually in July was we were going to stop by for a day and kind of have kind of check things out, and then it got pushed back, and then now it's not happening, and so. But yeah.
For sure, man. Yeah, you make it out this way, you definitely got to come through and see just see the process. I mean, if you've not seen how bowling balls are made, or if you have, and I've been fortunate, over the course of time, way back in the early days, I got to go through to Kentucky to see how bowling balls were made, but way back when, and then I worked for another company. I worked for Visionary for about a year, just over a year before I came here to Storm. I've been here, and those guys were in St. Louis, so that was the original Fab Ball plant. And so the process there of making balls was totally different. What it was there was different than what Hammer had become when it was in Baltimore. But I knew the process and I've seen the process. And then when I came here, after the fact, like I said, I've been here at Storm now for 19 and a half years. Coming up on 20 years being here at Storm. And, our process. And once people, if you've seen other spots and they come in and are like, oh, it's way different. Or if they've never seen it, people go, I had no idea that's what goes into a bowling ball. Just the number of people people that are in production, the number of hands that, I'll throw this tidbit at you, depending on the ball and the design, you're on average 14 to 18 people touching your bowling ball before it goes in the box.
Yeah,
that's the process that happened. And people are like, wait, what? And I go, yeah, because it starts with the core and then the people pouring the cores in the core room, and then you've got the urethane line. You got people mixing the urethanes, and then the process that happens for it to be demolded and moved around, and then the pins are all poured by hand, and then the lathe cutters, and then it goes into the sanded or being polished in that section, and then it goes into the engravers, and then it goes into adding the paint to the logo, and then it goes into the cleaning off, and then it goes to bagging, and then it goes to boxing, and then it goes to getting the sticker. And people go, wow, that many people touch my bowling ball. Like, yep, that's what, our quality control is second to none. It was funny. I actually had a pro shop ask me, like, hey, is there any chance that you guys make some blems or seconds? I go, yeah, we really don't believe in those anymore. I mean, when I first started at Storm, we had not figured out the process of making bowling balls yet, because, Storm was established at that point in time in 2001, but still hadn't dialed in where we are now. And, what we make now, the number of balls we make compared to the number of blems, it's minuscule. I said, man, if we've got 10 blem balls that happen in a month, somebody had a bad day.
Yeah.
And, it used to be one of those things where, we'd have a few hundred blems sometimes every couple of weeks. So, yeah, we've come a long way in production. But, yeah, it's like I said, man, you get the chance to step out here. And, it's one of those things that if people are curious and if they're passing through, all we ask is that you call and contact them before. We've got Kendall or we've got some other folks around here that can give tours. And again, we can't show you all the secrets, but you at least get to see a majority. You get kind of see as you come in the front door of the Wall of Fame. We've got one of every Storm ball in the United States market that's ever been produced in glass cabinets. We've got some pictures. So we've got every one of those. And we've got all the Rotor balls. We've got a lot of the original ones from dating back even to the 50s when Rotor started. To over the years. we've collected to what we've manufactured here since Bill and Bar bought it in '97. So you get to see all that kind of cool stuff, and yeah, you get to see our test facility. Our 2 lanes that you see in all the videos, and yeah, there's some cool stuff to see around here. And yeah, and if you're following us on social media, you're seeing that we're adding on another warehouse out back.
Yeah, I just saw that yesterday, I think.
Yeah, because we're in expansion mode of, and again, with us closing our Texas facility, we needed more space because again, now we're housing 3 brands, and you've got the 3 bowling ball brands plus you got to throw the shoe brand in there as well. We got 3G shoes. Just a lot of different things happening. But yeah, you get to see all that stuff. But yeah, just call in advance and schedule an appointment, and you can catch a tour. Usually there's somebody around here that if we know a tour's on the schedule, somebody will be here to give that tour. So for those who are inquisitive, or hey, we're going to Vegas for nationals, or hey, we're going to visit our cousins in California, or hey, we want to go to Portland, Oregon, and actually see the Armageddon and what it looks like with all the burning buildings and people shooting at each other. But we want to watch from a distance. If you want to go check that out, stop in Brigham City on the way, just to, enjoy a piece of life,
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. Thanks again, Mr. Chris Schlemer, RotoSchlem. You can follow him on all the Instagrams and the Facebooks and, and whatever else. And we'll let you get back to things. And remember, it's Rubicon release day. Again, I'll have a stream. We'll talk about all kinds of stuff. You can ask questions based on what we talked about here. Maybe can expand on that a little bit more, and have some accurate information instead of just kind of guessing at stuff sometimes. So thanks a bunch, man. We appreciate it. We'll I'll get out there sometime, but definitely have to do this again. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, brother. Anytime. Glad to help, man.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you. Thanks.
Okay. Take care.